All right, we'll call to order the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting for Thursday, August 2nd. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Commissioner Gilbert to start us off.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we've got a crowded house tonight. It's very exciting. Got several speakers. We'll start with roll call. Just for those of you in the audience, if you do want to speak for something you haven't filled out a speaker card, we do have some up on the desk over there. Okay, roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Gilbert.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor.
Here.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Here.
Commissioner Ittner.
Here.
Commissioner Firestone.
Here.
Commissioner Murphy.
Here.
Commissioner Comerford.
Here.
We are all here and present tonight. It's been a bit of a rare occasion. So
Yes.
welcome, everyone.
All right, so the first thing is public comment. No, were we planning on doing the Libby Lawn comments during that?
Yeah, they have to do it. The items listed on the agenda need to wait
Okay.
till that agenda item comes up for public comment. So any items not listed on the agenda, they're welcome to come up and make public comment at this time.
Right, it looks like the two cards I have are for
okay.
that item. Okay, anyone else? Anything else? No, okay. So the first thing then we have is a certificate of appreciation for Commissioner Gilbert that the mayor is going to be presenting. Before I call him up, though, I wanted to say a few words on behalf of the commission. Okay, no, not this one. Papers.
Too much paper.
All right. All right. So tonight is Commissioner Gilbert's last commission meeting before she heads off to college at Barnard College. Commissioner Gilbert's been an active and insightful member of our commission since December 2015, which makes her the third most senior commissioner here tonight. She's been a vocal participant in our discussions and a faithful representative of the youth in the Ojai Valley. She's taken great initiative in establishing a youth committee to capture the interests of middle school and high school age residents in the Ojai Valley and identifying programming that would be of interest to them. And as Maya pointed out to me in our efforts and her efforts to recruit a new youth commissioner, it's really challenging to find a good youth commissioner because the best candidates are generally too busy. And that's for the reasons that make them good candidates. So, for that reason, Maya is a great paradox. She's both a great candidate and she found time for our work. So on behalf of all the commissioners, I'd like to say thank you to Maya.
Well, thank you.
All right, Mary Johnson.
Thank you, Ryan, for those nice remarks for Maya. I think that we probably were studying the same history book on Maya's service. They said she was May 3rd on the report they gave me, which I thought was, if it was it December?
Yes,
Okay,
it was.
well then they gave me, bad data here because I was very cleverly going to say 3 years and 3 months, but didn't quite work out that way. But you appear to be the senior member of this group. I don't know what they'll do without you. When I saw your record of attendance and dedication to this, I thought, we have an election coming up. We got a candidate for city council. And then I read that you were going to New York, so that didn't work. But I hope you come back and put the same kind of service in to the community that you have for the Parks and Recreation Commission. We could use a person of your diligence. I thought that the thing, was it a ping pong tournament that you arranged? That's from my generation. I didn't know kids like to play it anymore. I guess it's coming back. But anyway, it was very nice to read about all of the effort the history with the commission, and it is really unusual for a youth representative on any board or commission. A lot of times they don't even serve on city things, but even within school districts, it's rare. And you must have been a very young child when you embarked on this and stayed with it. So it says a lot about the people of Ojai, where we get a lot of activity and a lot of participation, but we also get a lot of vacancies, don't we, with people who move along. I look at a lot of you, and some of you that I remember when you were kids, maybe a little older than Maya, but I'm looking at one in particular that I used to play volleyball with. Only I don't think they called it volleyball. They called it jungle ball, I think. And he was one of the better players. And glad to see Patrick back. Marguerite, nice to see you here, and haven't seen you since we had the interviews. But and Eric, another member. So Maya, you're a great inspiration. I hope all these folks put in the same kind of time and service that you put into this, and I hope you come back and run for city council. So with that, we are. I don't know if we're a low-budget operation, but it is a certificate of appreciation, and I brought you a little city pen.
Thank you.
Wear that with pride in New York.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Very much.
Woohoo!
Back to you, Ryan.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Commissioner or Chair Firestone, would you indulge me just so I can get a quick photo of the mayor
Yeah.
with a still photo of you handing her the certificate?
Still?
A still, yeah. Don't
You want me
move.
to have a photo?
Yeah, just somewhere in here. We could do it in front of the flag, or.
Good backdrop, or?
Yeah, but I was thinking, well, this is good. I was thinking the flag, maybe, and I'll come around. Thank you, Chair
Again?
Firestone. I'm kind of making this into a bit of a
It's nice.
circus type thing, but.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Are we in your way?
No, I'm gonna go
Okay.
to the front here.
All right.
I'm gonna go this way.
And while we're waiting for Sophocles, Maya, I don't want to scare you, but I was a youth commissioner on this very commission back in 19. So be careful what you wish for. It might come back all the way around.
Did you put in 3 years?
Oh, no, 1 year. Seemed like 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1970.
All right.
Mm.
1, 2, 3. All right. One more.
Doing this one's off too.
One. Oh, one, you can go back.
Yeah, because then you get the nice flag.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. All right.
That's
That's a
great.
great photo. Yeah.
By the way, happy school year.
Mm.
Okay, item 5, Police Department report. I don't see Sergeant Matthews here. Anything that was relayed to you, Sophocles?
Nothing for the good of the group, so.
Okay.
Things are all.
Sound good?
All is well, at least at Sarasota Park. We haven't had any issues, or at least from our own staff had to do any call-outs from there. And as he mentioned in the last time he came to or the last meeting, he was saying the picnic rentals are still doing well as far as the users and their respect for the neighbors in that space. So things are still going well with our new rules
Great.
for the
Okay.
picnic rentals.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments that anyone would like relayed to the police department? Okay. All right, item 6, Public Works report. I think we're going to have Mr. Grant here
He
pretty
is
soon.
most definitely coming. He
I
said
just saw
he
him.
said he
Just
would
walked
get
by.
here by 6:15-ish.
Okay,
So, and I do know he was going to make mention once he gets here, and it sounds like he's almost entering the building, on the ribbon cutting, not ribbon cutting, but the ceremony they had today for the electric garden tools. So he'll mention a little bit about that. And,
Okay, great.
and here he is, the
And-
man of the hour.
Yes, with no further ado,
About a moment to
Ojai's own, Mr. Greg Grant. Welcome. You're just in time for the Public Works report. Yeah.
Just got to Public Works report.
All right. Well, I'm glad I'm here for that. I think Mayor Johnson's here. I saw in the back, and we had a nice ribbon cutting ceremony today at the park. Maybe you already covered
we
that.
didn't. We just we weren't going to cover it until you got here.
Okay.
'Cause you're
and
covering it.
So that was a nice presentation. There's a lot of people present. It was in Libby Park at the gazebo, and the California Air Resources Board was there, as well as State Legislator Lemon, right, is her name, and also Ventura County Air Pollution Control District was there. They provided the grant for the equipment. So this is what I'm talking about, is all this a grant that provided for replacement of all of our gas-powered two-cycle engines, powered equipment with battery-powered equipment. So we purchased about $60,000 worth of equipment. That's all of the gas-powered string trimmers, the blowers, the hedge trimmers, the pruning saws we use on trees, as well as the extendable pruning saws. And so those were all replaced with battery-powered equipment. You might have seen that Still is a big manufacturer, and they have these backpack batteries now that last for about 4 hours with heavy use. And so that would take care of most people's use for a full day easily. But we've got all the crews rigged with an extra battery or two even for certain activities they have to do. So that backpack battery will hook into all the various equipment we have. And then also, for instance, at Sarzati, there's a battery-powered lawnmower. It's a 60-inch deck, a 5-foot deck on it. So that's pretty slick. I mean, there's that lawnmower was roughly $24,000, which is about the same price you pay for a diesel or a gasoline type mower of that size. And then we have also got a stand behind 33-inch deck, which we can move around. That's self-powered. And then we've got a small Still 20-inch deck that we can use as well. So it's pretty great equipment. It helps with regional air pollution, as well as the exposure that the workers have when they're using that equipment. It's at high exposure for emissions and exhaust. And then the noise is significantly less. It's pretty impressive when you see the electric mower move out or anything. It's just completely silent, like any electric car or anything else you see.
What type of batteries are being used?
Everything's lithium ion.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I know Jacobson, for instance, if you know them, they make lead. There's still two other companies making larger deck mowers, but they're still lead batteries, which have issues with them.
I just know in the recent 6 months they've had some lithium issues with fires and explosions with
Right.
lithium batteries. So just
At least we're in the wide open out in the
Yeah.
little Sarzati green field out there, so I think that shouldn't be an issue. We've got a sprinkler system irrigation.
There you go. Just wanted to get that out there.
I haven't heard. I mean, these have all been pretty well tried and tested. You know, I know there's been some issues with a couple right on a Boeing airplane, and what was it, the little scooter thing people ride around? They had some of those that were having issues as well. But it's all pretty great news. We'll be using that new equipment, and it's got a lot of benefits, like I was saying, to the crew as well as the local environment. I think a neat statistic that they threw out is that the total pollution generated by small two-cycle engines, and that's anything less than 25 horsepower, so that doesn't even include in motorcycles and off-road vehicles. It's just small vehicles. Yeah. The expected, at the rate they're going, the pollution from those will exceed all vehicles in California within a couple of years. So it's just cars are getting so clean, and there's very minimal, emission controls on the small equipment. So that was a great ceremony, I think, and it'll be our crew's using the equipment now, and it's appreciated by everybody. It's just amazing how we, at the end of the ribbon cutting ceremony, the crew went over and mowed the lawn because we left it a little bit long, and it's just amazing how we were able to talk to the guy while he was mowing his lawn, and people were around, and that seems to be the biggest comment we get from the public is how quiet it is. They're impressed with, you can talk to people, and it's just another world from what it was. I think we could even drop, we were saying, our OSHA required our hearing protection program, because we're doing a final check on that, but it appears that the sound levels are not high enough to even require it. We'll still have them available and use it, just is a good idea, but it's not required. So I thought that was big news of the day, anyways.
That's
Yeah,
great.
it's
Yeah.
definitely was.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Anything else in the Public Works report? I know we have you in one more discussion item. We're going to talk about a few things, so.
And a lesser critical item is the Libby Fountain has had issues with leaks lately. We're losing a couple inches of water a day, so we're hired a company that's helping us with some detection systems. The piping goes underneath the sidewalks out there and goes up underneath the fountain. So they're helping us locate that leak anyway. So you might see them out there working, and we're even going to have the fountain flagged off early next week so they can listen very carefully. I think they were listening very carefully the other day, and it's such a sensitive instrument. The guy almost fell over when I forget what that noise was that occurred in the background, but it's you have to keep people away from the hearing device and so on.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, we'll come back to you in a minute. So item 7 is approval of minutes. We've got 7A is June 7th, 7B is July 5th. Any comments on either of those? Folks have a chance to review them?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can take one motion then to approve both. If someone would like to make it.
I motion to approve the June 7th, 2018 and July 5th, 2018 Parks and Recreation minutes.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. We have approved minutes. Okay, item 8, discussion items. The first one is the Libby Bowl lawn site plan. We did reach out through the rec department, thank you, Allison, to the public to encourage folks to come for today. It looks like we have a couple of speakers. I know we've received a couple of emails as well. And then we also have the survey that the rec department did, and we got over 200 respondents from that. So we've had a lot of input on this. So I think we can start with our speakers. We've got, the first one is Anna Wagner.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Anna Wagner. I am an Ojai resident, and I work at the Ojai Music Festival. I've been working there since 2005. I was also the fundraising campaign manager for the Libby Bowl rebuild, so I'm, along with Kathy, pretty familiar with the lawn issue. I think my colleague sent a memo out to you in advance, and I'm just going to read from that. In its current configuration, the Libby Bowl does not offer a line of sight for the lawn to the stage. This has been a consistent issue for patrons since the facility was reopened after the rebuild, which was completed in 2011. For over 50 years, ticket buyers to Libby Bowl concerts enjoy the lawn experience while viewing the programming presented on stage. During the community's fundraising campaign and design periods beginning in 2008, it was the intention of the fundraisers, donors, and the architect to maintain and improve the same lawn experience quality by including a raked and elevated lawn. After completion of the bowl's design during the construction period, it was discovered that additional grading was required in order to comply with ADA standards in the seat portion of the bowl. The cost of changing the grading caused the planned Libby Bowl lawn component of the original project to be postponed. After the rebuild, the Ojai Music Festival began to receive feedback from local and out-of-town patrons expressing displeasure with the lack of sightlines for the patrons on the new lawn. After the 2011 Music Festival, the organization conducted a lawn ticket buyer survey. The response was overwhelming. 142 patrons stated that the lack of line of sight to the stage was detrimental to their experience in the Libby Bowl. Of these 142 patrons, a majority of them were Ojai residents. There was a couple of quotes, but I'll just read 3. One of the patrons quoted, "My family has been coming to Ojai since the 1940s. I don't think I've missed a festival in 15 years. I couldn't see or hear anything from the lawn. I will not be attending again until this has been remedied." Another one was, I was very frustrated and disappointed by the fact that wherever we located ourselves on the lawn, we were not able to see the stage and performers. I pay for a live performance to see the performers, and I doubt we will be coming again until the project is done. And then the last quote, like others, I was completely disappointed with the sightlines from the lawn. The lawn seats provide a unique experience that was totally lost, as it was nearly impossible to see performers on stage. Would have enjoyed the concert just as well from the East Tennis Court bleachers and saved the cost of a ticket. In response to the consistent complaints from our lawn patrons, the music festival invested monitors for the lawn seating area and annually pays to have them installed and serviced by technicians. Unfortunately, this has not resolved the issue. In 2017, Mark Swed, the music critic for the Los Angeles Times, wrote, "Meanwhile, Ojai needs to pay more attention to Ojai. There have been few improvements since the Libby Bowl was rebuilt, particularly to amplification. Right now, the city is debating whether to spend $250,000 undoing the worst mistake and build an incline, restoring those inexpensive ticket views of the stage. Many, like me, caught the Ojai bug as a student on the grassy knoll. Either you go or you stay. Where yesterday's hill, today's flat lawn with flat screen monitors, my choice might not have been the same." I just want to add to that statement that our audience ranges from, Ojai to an international audience. About 30% of our audience comes from the Ojai Ventura area, and most of those people choose to sit on the lawn. As many of you guys know, in the other Libby Bowl concerts around here, the lower price option of the $20 ticket is what appeals most to our Ojai residents, and so I think that's all I have to say, unless you guys have any questions.
I do. So in the third paragraph down, it says 142 patrons stated the lack of line sight to the stage was detrimental. How many total responses did you get? What percentage of
We
that?
normally get about 300
Okay.
responses to our survey. And that was from the 2011, but I would say that every year since then, there's always comments about the sightline of the lawn.
Okay, thank you.
Was that survey, the 300 respondents, just from people on the lawn, or is that for all of your survey?
That was from, you know what? It was from the lawn ticket buyer survey.
Okay, just
Yeah.
to make sure, okay.
So about half
Yeah.
of the respondents.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Other questions for Ms. Wagner?
Do you plan on increasing the $20?
I think that first year, let's see. I think after that first year, we had thought about raising it, and then after, in response to this survey, we stopped that activity because we knew that there wasn't going to be a demand for that. We used to be able to seat about 500, 600 people on the lawn, and now we kind of cap it at 300 because after a certain point, there's really no point in selling it. We have those lawn monitors that are 2 lawn monitors that are on 2 sides of the lawn, and when you look at the pattern of where they're sitting, they're kind of just all gathered around the TV screens, and not really, it's kind of spread evenly throughout. So it's really the screens that they're going to, which is unfortunate because the bowl is right there.
Right.
So the used to be 600, that's before the bowl remodel.
That's right, yeah.
And
We used to be
that-
able to seat up to 600.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
back there was,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And to that same question about the ticket cost, if the lawn were improved, do you think that the ticket cost for lawn seating would increase?
We might
because of the
consider
demand?
it. We went from, I think back in the day it was like super cheap, but I think we went from 15 to 20. I don't know if we'd go more than like 25, but, and it would really depend on whether there's a vast improvement on the lawn for us to be able to do that. But we like to keep that seating low so that everybody can enjoy the concerts from the grass.
Thanks. Other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you. We also have,
Sorry, can I ask one more question? Sorry.
yeah.
When it became clear that they were not going to be able to implement, when it became clear that the sightlines were gone due to the regrading for the ADA accessibility, did they have at that point an actual plan in place for the improvements to the lawn?
I think Kathy could probably answer that better.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
then I'll
Yeah.
wait until you're.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Ms. Wagner? Okay.
Thank
We
you.
have, thank you. Kathy Nolan?
Good evening. Kathy Nolan, landscape architect. I was actually part of the design team, so I know this very intimately. And just a little bit of the history, one of the first assignments that I had from the get-go was to actually work on the seating and the sight lines. So I did a lot of the sections and the studies and worked with David Burry, who was the architect at the time. And one thing that came up consistently at every team meeting that we had, which we had quite consistently, where are we at on the seat count? So whatever we were doing, no matter where the aisles were going to be, what type of seating we selected, including the lawn area, we had a count. And a couple times I had to take a seat away when we had to maintain the brace support on our heritage sycamore. Everybody was like, I said, no, sorry, that tree's protected. You're going to have to lose that one seat. But it was topmost, one of the things that we had in all our thought and design process was the seating. And then as Anna mentioned, we had gone through plan check quite a few times because it was a large project. We had already gone through an ADA process. And if I remember correctly, it was right before we were going to start. It came back, and lo and behold, there was another ADA check, and they said, oh, because you've got ADA seating up at the top of the seating area, top of the amphitheater, you're going to have to raise it, because if there's an encore and people are standing in front of wheelchairs or somebody who can't get up, that's not acceptable. So you're going to have to raise the seating, and that's what happened. So at the same time, we went back and redesigned part of the lawn to make it work, and then due to value engineering, it was cut, unfortunately. So basically, the lawn, the way you see it, was not really altered except for a very small portion at the southern end towards the seating area, only because of construction. It wasn't, they did do new irrigation, but essentially it was maintained. But what I also wanted to say was, so we all knew it, and everybody was really disappointed because we had really worked so hard to make it all work. And even that first festival, I sat down in the amphitheater for, I think, the opening night, but then on the Sunday, I sat on the lawn. And I had to get up and walk over, stand up way off to the side so that I could see the stage. And we had a meeting that following week, the whole design team, and everybody reported back. We knew it was going to happen, but we experienced it. And shortly thereafter, Jeff Hayden, who was the executive director of the music festival, actually hired me, and Martin Hartman, who worked for David Burry. Unfortunately, David had passed away right about the time of the opening. And we did a design study and produced a plan. So not only was it the two of us who had worked on it for almost a couple of years, so we were very intimately involved with the project, but we also brought on Kevin Jones, Jones Construction Management. His company was actually the overall management company for the construction portion, so he came and worked on it with us. And also Paul Rogers, who also unfortunately has passed away, arborist, very well known and worked for the city. He was the arborist on that project. So Martin and I were the two key players, but we did have Kevin and Paul Rogers work on us with a new proposed solution. And we actually presented that at the Music Festival board meeting. I want to say it was late summer, early fall. I can't remember the exact date. And the whole goal was to raise funds to do it. Kevin Jones' company also produced a bid or quote for it, and he did use prevailing wages, and the cost too, but we did have that provided, so we had a target of what to raise. And then I know Jeff ended up leaving, and for various other reasons, and so many people had donated so much money at that time, it kind of died back. Anna probably could fill you in a little bit more better, but so we did actually produce a plan and gave it to the music festival. And what we considered was, I think one of the main considerations is the oak tree that's there. You don't want to lose that tree, or at least I don't think you should. So whatever we designed was designed to maintain that tree with the least amount of harm or damage. So we did a retaining wall around it. It was a stack wall with, if if I can remember right, minimal footing, if any at all. And we did have some, a raised level on the south side, that would be the side that's towards the seating, brought the grade up a little, produced a new grade, but at some point you have to meet the existing grade. You just can't ramp the entire thing up to the tympan arch. Well, I mean, you could. You'd have to figure out how you want to do that. You're going to step in and over. But basically you had to meet grade at some point. So it probably wasn't as optimal as we had originally designed everything, but we felt and put our time into that we came up with a good solution. I'm not saying that you have to use that. I'm just throwing it out that it's there, it's available. The Music Fest will pay for it. They also allowed us to give it to, I think I gave it to a couple city council members maybe a year or two ago. They asked for it, and the Music Festival approved that. So, and there was one other thing I wanted to point out too in our solution. Because we came up with the solution immediately after the first festival, and it really was like right after the installation, there was a 60-inch box sycamore tree that we felt, okay, gee, it's only been in the ground for a couple months. We could easily move it, but it's been in the ground since 2011, so that would make it a little more complicated at this point in time. I'm sure there's, many different solutions to that, but generally, that's kind of what happened, and I just wanted to let you know that there is a plan that we did do, and that you may want to look at or just consider in your process. Any questions?
I think we did see we saw a proposed plan from Councilmember Haney.
Well, I think he did his own plan.
He might have done his own. I don't know if he used some of yours. It was
I don't know.
essentially the same design that you described.
Oh, I don't know, yeah.
The initial cost of that was $166,200. He gave us a chart, by the way, with 25% inflation for today's dollars.
Okay, that sounds about right, because I think it was, I didn't bring it with me, but I think it was about maybe $45,000.
Yeah, that was
something.
the question I was going to get at.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, yeah. That might have been the original quote, and that was with prevailing wage also.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
and that was in 2011.
So, like I said, it seemed like your design, based on your description, and his design, if they are different, then they're very, very much the same.
Well, he may have, just went right over it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it. But
I work in civil engineering, and I
Yeah.
saw the cost factor of that, and I understand what Teamster wages are and what operator wages are, but it seemed a little high, $207,000 for.
it might be, like I said, for sure. I mean, you'd want to get more than one quote, and at this point, you may want a redesign or a modification, depending on what you want to do. But that was just the quote that was provided by Kevin Jones from Jones Construction, who had worked on the project and who also, on the overall project, but also on the redesign of the lawn area. He put the numbers together. He was the one who actually managed the bids that came in and awarded the general contractor and what have you. So he managed all that. And once again, you may want to put it out. It could be less. Could be more.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that context.
Thanks.
It's really helpful. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so we have our joint meeting with the City Council coming up at the end of the month, and our goal was to have a recommendation to present to the City Council at that meeting. So I think we just want to discuss. It'd kind of be good to hear where commissioners are sitting as far as a recommendation, and if you had time to go through all of the survey responses and other feedback we got. I know also you might want to.
Yeah.
The letter that you got.
I had as we all did, I understand now, an email from someone that I know and respect, Therese Hartman, who's been a long-time Ojai resident. And I told her I would read her email into the record since she couldn't be here. So the email says, Dear Councilman, dear Council people, as a third-generation Ojai resident, I have come to be very proud of our little town's many claims to fame, including the Ojai Tennis Tournament and the Ojai Music Festival. I'm equally proud of the setting they are in our beloved Libby Park. Widely used and much cherished by locals, it's natural that any changes at all might cause a rank-and-file support or initial objection. It's important, therefore, that the discussion process exists, but we must be sure not to fail to look at the highest use of an area as defined by form and function. In my view, having attended decades of music festivals at the internationally famed Libby Bowl and always preferring to be on the lawn, I would very much be in favor of grading the area between the bowl seating and the tennis bleachers. In this way, folks would have a clear line of sight not only for the Ojai Music Festival, but all of the other events that are being held in Libby Bowl. With the recent renovation, we've seen more use than ever before, but unfortunately, lawn tickets just don't offer much these days. At best, we must have our picnic experience and hear the music or plays on the lawn, but without the ability to see what is going on. The Libby Bowl fails all of us. For me, the Libby Bowl feels incomplete without the final grading. I beseech you to consider finishing what was started. I respectfully request that we honor what Edward Libby initiated so long ago in giving Ojai and the international audiences a bowl that works for all of us. Therese Hartman, and then she has her phone number there as well.
Thanks. All right, discuss.
I would like to say something. As far as the lawn seating is concerned, I have mixed emotions about it, only because for years I attended Tanglewood in Massachusetts, and we sat on the lawn and we never saw the stage because our tickets would not allow that. But the music was so wonderful, and sitting on the lawn was so beautiful with the symphony that I felt that if we were sitting, like some people did, it wouldn't have had the same effect. And I've just been really, I read Teresa Hartman's, email this afternoon before arriving here. And that's kind of what I was kind of mulling over in my mind. And I just, had to express it, so.
Well, from my own personal experience, I really love music. I've gone to a lot of concerts, and I have been to a few at Libby Bowl. I personally feel like I would like to see the performers. That's one of my favorite parts, because I love seeing people perform and getting into the passion of the music. So I feel like grading the Libby Bowl would be the best plan, because I also received several emails in this past week, and all of them urged me to vote and recommend to approve the Libby Bowl plan, and I personally think that would be the best for the community.
So I'm still struck with the 50-50-ish nature of all of the responses that we've gotten. Half the people want to see it, half the people are, they don't care. So, or at least they don't speak up. That's where I struggle with the cost-benefit factor of the whole project, and continue to. And it might be important, although time is a little bit of the essence, that if we were to review the options again and see if there was a way to do something with less cost. I totally I'm a music person too, so I understand that, and part of me says, yeah, I'd like to be at a place where I can see the performers. But boy, you go to any concert these days and you buy the cheap seat and you're not getting to see the stage, or you're watching it on TV. That's what you're doing. Yeah. You do it at the Santa Barbara Bowl, you do it at the Greek, you do it on any big stadium shows. We're not that. And I understand that, and we're an intimate gathering, and it's a beautiful setting. I just struggle with the cost-benefit part and the 50-50-ish nature of the feedback that we've gotten. That's where I am right now. I have a non-committal committal.
Mm-hmm. I think you and I are on the same page in that regard. The 50-50 aspect, it seems like the most vocal people are directly involved with the bowl itself. These are people that work with it, that sell tickets, and so they're in line to benefit the most, and they are in the line to get the most complaints as well. Aside from the people sitting here now and Teresa, That's how you pronounce her name?
Therese.
Therese, excuse me. Therese is the only person that has contacted me directly, not directly related to the bowl, with a view for. Again, like you had mentioned, to echo, the surveys that we have, and apparently the surveys that they had, were about 50-50, one way or the other. And of course, you're gonna get more complaints than you are gonna get people, that just don't care, giving their opinion on the matter. I personally, I don't have any problem going ahead with this, but again, I echo your sentiments on this, is the budget issue. I work in this industry, and I don't see spending $207,000 on grading. And granted, that's just an estimate, and we can bid that out. But this is an old estimate too, from 166 plus 25% increase. So ranging from $185,000 to $250,000 for a little bit of grading, some drainage, a retaining wall, a handicap accessible ramp, and some steps. That's a lot of money. Prevailing wages, as was mentioned, union wages, I get it. So that's my only hangup right there, is the budget issue. If we can make a decision without, and maybe put a cap on it, or say, yes, we can do this, but it's gotta be under $250,000, or under, 150,000, which we probably can't do. We can't, I don't think we can make that decision here. Then I'd be, I'd have a more clear definition of where to go. But as it stands now, I'm tipping the scales one way or the other. It's just, it's money, and then it's opinion of the public, and I'm getting equal on both.
I would just also add that last year, my daughter, who started Ojai Youth Opera, put on in Libby Brundabar, and many, many, many people sat on the lawn. And it was really kind of interesting because there weren't, the performers were all children. So many of them were so tiny that, you couldn't really see them even when you were sitting in the seat. My grandson was one of them. He's 3, so they start, very young, and then they go right up into high school. So I don't know. I guess I'm not convinced really right now. I guess I need more input, from you guys and from the situation,
Can we make a decision without writing a blank check on this?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Well, I think what we need to do is relay to the city council how much of a priority or how important we think this should be. I don't think we have to give it a go, no-go, or put a dollar.
Ours is but a recommendation. We aren't making a decision, we're making
Right,
recommendations.
can we make a recommendation
And-
without putting a blank check on it?
I think also you can separate the money from the idea a little bit, and you can decide, so from my perspective, having been on this commission for, I don't remember how many years at this point, and was around through the whole Libby Boldy building and participated in some of those committees and some of went on, I think there's something in that that's really important, which was no one expected it to come out the way that it did. The project really isn't whatever was envisioned in the conceptual phase, in the design phase, in the execution. The lawn ending up the way that it did was an unfortunate outcome of budget problems, just not being able to get where we needed to be, partially because of the timing of when the information came back. If that information about that ADA problem had come earlier, they might have had different ways to deal with it. But literally, it was, 2 weeks before they were about to start the whole thing. So in the spirit of what was intended by those original donors, by the designers, by all of the volunteers who participated in that process, there was always an intent that there be a view from that lawn. Because throughout its history, there'd always been a view from that lawn. As long as I can remember back to even when Illusions was there, and all the things that I remember as a child, having grown up here, there was a view from the lawn. So I think it's important to kind of understand that in this larger perspective, this was not an intended outcome, that it has the design that it has.
Well, on the other side of the coin, it was intended that we're supposed to have 600 people sit at Libby Bowl, and now there's less than that.
Well, yes, I'm just talking to you in the spirit of what people would like to see there who've experienced it over many years. And the whole 50% thing, it is 50%, but looking at our statistics, if you look closely and dive in, it's not so clearly 50%. If you read comments and then you divide out people's feelings about expenses versus feelings about the project, it's not as clear cut in my mind. So if you go through all that detail, there were a lot of people who had very strong feelings about wanting to be able to see and liking that, but then when you put the money next to it, they're less clear on it. So I think that to not recommend it based on a financial uncertainty doesn't make sense to me. I think that for me, it's very clear that the spirit was always to have the lawn be able to see the bowl as it had previous to the reconstruction at that time. So I would love to see the idea move forward, because council's just looking, is it a good idea, isn't it a good idea, is really where we're at. From my perspective, I think it's a good idea. From the money perspective, if you were to ask me where I'd prioritize it on our list of priorities, it doesn't fall at the top. When you come right down to the money part, that part doesn't fall at the top for me. But I'd hate to see it fall off, because I do think that being able to see from the lawn is really, it's valuable, and it's part of the history of that venue, and it's part of what we all experienced for years and lost in that project, unintentionally, but nonetheless lost. And I'm a lawn person. I love the lawn. I love that you can be back there and you can talk a little. And, it's just a very different experience, and it's social.
Yeah.
And you see people you don't know, and you move around, and I think all of that is very Ojai. And but I would
It's
love
nice.
to also be able to see it for me, to not lose one for the other. But, so that's just my 2 cents on it. And I feel like as a recommendation from our commission, we can address both of our issues.
Can we, though?
In one recommendation. I feel like we can. I feel like we can recommend to move forward with looking at how to make this come to fruition, but then at the same time, also let them know that as far as our priorities on our capital improvements, it doesn't fall at the top.
And Commissioners, could I mention something too? I just wanted to interject. When I was involved with Kathy and the design group when they considered a fix on this, and I just want to make sure everybody's aware and considering that some of the issues, some of the challenges that are occurring with this. And I think that number one is, I think just to imagine what it really looks like. If you can imagine walking in through the sound arch and heading up that brick walkway, the intention, the design is to match the grade in the back, so there'd be no change in the back, right? But as you walk forward, in the middle of that lawn area, there's a pedestal, a concrete pedestal. It's about 3 foot tall. That's about what the proposed grade would come up to. So the trick is, as you walk down that the donor brick walkway, you would be going from a matching grade at the sound arch, and it would increase in height up to about 3 foot at that pedestal, which is almost directly to the side of that heritage oak, which Kathy mentioned. And then it would slope in various ways down to match the grade where the ADA, seating, it was flattened up in front of it. So I think a couple of tricks that you got to think of is that you could have no access that entire brick walkway, and that would preserve the entire area. For instance, if you had a retaining wall that went from 0 and stepped up to 3 foot and then sloped down, you wouldn't lose 1 square foot of seating area in the back. That's probably an unusual way to approach it. I think most people would expect to have steps that came in about midway there, but right about where the drinking fountain is, right? So you can imagine steps coming up, 3 or 4 steps to match in there. So when you do that, now you've got steps, and you're going to have a guardrail on the steps, and if you sit behind those steps areas, you might be having a blocked view. You might not. You could have an attendant there to make sure nobody stands there, but you're going to have flow of people through that area. Also, if you did the retaining wall, you'd pretty much have to have a railing of some sort of barrier, especially because it's dark there a lot. So you might have an issue of safety or different ways you addressed it with railings and so on. The other way to do it, there was some thought about maybe having a slope up. So if you were going to go with a slope, you could avoid the railing and the retaining wall and reduce cost and so on, but now you've impacted square footage even more, right? If you go back 3 foot at 3-to-1, typical milder slope, but not that mild for somebody to walk down, really. You're dealing with 10 feet or so, all right? 3 foot, 9 feet.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Mm-hmm.
Are you envisioning the steps in the middle, down the center?
I would envision them roughly where the drinking fountain is.
You're saying
cutting
the
in
same
perpendicular
line,
to the brick walkway.
Perpendicular to the drinking fountain.
Right, perpendicular to the walkway as you walk towards the stage.
Okay.
So you'd walking towards the stage down that brick walkway, and you'd make a direct 90-degree turn, and you'd step up into the area.
Okay.
That's similar to the artist rendition.
'Cause
that
I-
was
yeah, 'cause I
done
thought-
in Revit that we saw that Councilman Randy.
Now, you might be thinking up in the front, that's all sloped, right? When you are at the tree or at that concrete pedestal, that's about where the high point is, and then it slopes down very mildly, I think at very ballparking, kind of a 6 to 8 to 1 slope. And there was a couple of different approaches. There are big steps or else just a
Right.
consistent slope, a lawn area.
And keeping people off to the sides versus walking through the middle
Right,
was one of the designs we saw, I think, toward the end.
right. I think most of the designs had that whole area available for, sitting,
Yeah.
either stepped or sloped.
Right.
Yeah. So I just was mentioning, in order to maintain, there's as that grade comes up, it makes it difficult to access it, and you've got kind of a safety issue there. I think some people are just assuming, oh, you just use a slope, but I think that's a very awkward way to leave people in the dark walking out. So now you're landing up with kind of lighting options. How do you signify there's a slope kicking in here? Or you could have certain railing, people use all kinds of stainless steel wiring. In fact, we have it there in the bowl, right, to try to improve sight through it or minimize the impact and so on. So there's a couple things there. It'll cage it in a little bit. And the other part is that those trees, that oak, there was some talk about the oak, and if you're going to really preserve that oak, I mean, if you bring 3 feet of soil on that, and it's going to have a major impact to that oak. The roots need to breathe, and they need water. So the water would get down to the roots, but they might not breathe well. And all the trees are stressed heavily from the past 10 years of droughts everywhere in the valley and throughout the state. So it could be an issue in just making that tree properly survive when you put that much soil over it, but there's ways that you can aerate it and you can try to help assure that it makes it. So the other part was, when it comes up, is there's a major limb right there. So that limb would very likely be in the direct view path. So that major limb would have to be removed. And even at that point, I think there's some issues maintaining a 6 or 7 foot vertical clearance in there. So that oak has got major issues. I mean, if you want to have a same thing, a little retaining wall, and push, the general rule of thumb would be to stay out of the drip line. Our code says drip line plus 5 feet, but I think the proposal there was to go underneath the drip line nearly halfway in towards the trunk or so. So that's an impact. But if you have that retaining wall there, now you've also impacted further area, right? So now you could have a rock retaining wall, so it's more, the slope to deal with. It takes up more space, and a couple ways to handle that slope, just like on the other side, and how much impact you have, and how do you see through it, or do you try to put? I know at one time we were thinking, go over for the drip line and put a whole deck across the area. So now you have almost zero impact. You could have good breathability for the root structure, for air and water, and but you've got a deck there. It increases cost a little bit, and maintenance and so on too in that area. And I guess I think the next 2 points were more how it looks and feels and what kind of benefit you're really going to get with it. But the other part was, I think that can be overcome, is how do you build this thing, because it's a busy season we have now, and then it's rainy season, which is off season, which is not
We're
ideal
hoping.
for building, right? So yeah, the occasional rainy season, and then those costs. Yeah, we were.
You can schedule around it.
And we were just I was just in a conference call this morning talking to all the other cities and county, in Ventura County, just talking about prices have escalated a lot on projects. It's just part of SB 1 has provided more money to public agencies to help repair roads. So it was really more road focused, but I think everybody's seeing, as the economy's improved and the contractors are very busy everywhere. And so I think, if anything, those prices would tend to increase substantially.
Or do you think double?
I think they were in the 150 or so to 250 range, 260 range, and I personally think that you're going to see, depending how much retaining wall work you do. If you do all slopes and all that, it's great, but you're really reducing, just a basic concept. Instead of retaining wall, you're going slopes and you're reducing the amount of area. So if you don't do the retaining walls, your benefits become less. So, but when you do retaining walls and guardrails and all that, it's getting more expensive, and you want a substantial, high-quality improvement out there that's municipal and it's going to last for a long time. So I think you're going to be on the higher side of that myself. And that, I just wanted to throw it in as kind of the wet blanket. I appreciate you taking that.
Thanks.
I think it's good to know.
And the cost, the majority of the costs are in the hardscape portion of it. It's not the grading and the moving of the dirt and all of that. Is that
I think it all adds
fair
up.
takeaway, or-
But I think you're going to have to do some work. I mean, not only the oak, but like Kathy had mentioned, sycamore trees out there are established, and they're going to need either pull and replant, which is a substantial cost, or try to do special aeration techniques and so on to try to help the roots develop to a higher elevation.
Can you come to the mic if you're going to say something?
I didn't know if the public hearing was still open. Greg, if I remember too, we have the electric boxes that are down. Are they down at the front of the lawn area that have to be dealt with too, the utilities? So I think that played into it. On the
Yeah,
price.
and as you mentioned, that landscaping, all that, all that
Yeah.
lawn gets pulled, and all the landscaping irrigation system
There
gets
are
pulled.
utilities in there. There's electric.
Yep.
That's minor, though. A handhole and a 50-foot of trench, is no big deal.
Yeah, but I'm just
Wire's
pointing it out.
expensive. I mean, yeah, you got to extend the wire and so on.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure when you were describing all those options. I hadn't seen those other plans that were submitted, so I'm not sure. But anyway.
I think Councilman Haney's very rough concept was to try to save money by avoiding retaining walls and using boulders or sloping. Those were a couple
I
ideas
think
he
his
had.
most recent plan has a retaining wall around the other.
It does. I
That's what
specifically remember
the
that.
plan that I did had a retaining at the bottom. But we did it like a seat wall.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't lose seating, and then you didn't have that railing issue either. So it was under 18 inches.
And I know
Shouldn't be a problem.
How did you provide safety when people walk up?
You were mentioning about a staircase by the drinking fountain.
Mm-hmm.
We also had stairs there also. Yeah.
And when you walk to the steps, if you're walking straight towards the stage, you'll go to the steps, and those would be, I think there was some idea of soft lighting at the bottom of the steps to help highlight them for safety and so on, right?
Right. You could still maintain the brick path. You would just have to retain it to meet grade. But you would need lighting there too. You didn't want to have a tow trip or anything.
What about a railing?
I mean, you could. I don't think we had one on ours. If I remember right, I believe we may have had a railing on the. We did a stack. We showed a stacked wall, not one that had a footing on it where the oak was. Once again, I had Paul Rogers review and look at everything we were doing and come out to the site. But as far as the impact on the oak, we weren't going to be digging a trench or anything. So it would have been on grade. There would have been fill on that one side, though.
Fill, yeah, was it?
Yeah, where you'd have to.
Was it approximately kind of a radius?
Yeah, there was a
That came off
radius.
about halfway of the drip line?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
So you're saying to be stacked rock is kind of retain the soil?
Stack rock, or it could even be like the stack pavers.
And somehow you'd have to highlight that to the
Mm-hmm.
patrons in there that nobody walked and stepped into it.
Right. So it might require a railing and possibly lighting too. So,
Mhm. Right.
yeah, things add up.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thanks. I kind of went through the survey finally in detail, and I think it's helpful. It was helpful for me to kind of understand the range of opinions from the online survey that we did, and so I kind of organized some thoughts, and I'd like to share them with everyone. So I kind of saw the spectrum of kind of concern and interest in doing something, and it ranged from some respondents who said that the view was fine from the lawn. There weren't many, but there were definitely some. But then there were a bunch of respondents that said the view wasn't fine, but it wasn't a problem. And I think that's kind of what we've heard from Commissioner Comerford. People said people know what they're getting when they buy the lawn tickets, and they are less expensive in part for that reason. And it allows a space for people who want to enjoy events that way. There's space to lie down or dance or have their kids run around. Also, having the flat lawn facilitates other uses. So for other events, there's booths or bouncy houses or food there. There was also concern that the better viewing could lead to higher costs for those tickets, which we were asking about earlier. And also concern that this mostly serves primarily out-of-town concert goers. So that was kind of the lower end of the spectrum. And then, so I guess the majority of respondents did acknowledge that the view wasn't good. But so that was kind of the first section of respondents who said the view wasn't good, said it wasn't a problem. And then a lot of respondents said it wasn't good, but they saw it as a low priority to improve. They saw as higher priorities traffic improvements, spending more money on Sarzati Park, a public pool, things for kids. In general, things that kind of serviced a broader group within the community. Then there were those who thought that the view wasn't good, but they weren't sure how to prioritize it without understanding the city's other objectives and the costs of the project. There were some that said that the improvements should be paid for by those who benefit from the increased revenue that it provides. And then kind of at the other end of the spectrum, and much like the speakers we've heard, were those who thought that the view is not good and it should be a high priority for the city because individuals would enjoy events more. Also, possibly we'd be able to attract better events to the Libby Bowl and could provide a better experience for low-cost ticket purchasers. So I think for me, as far as what we communicate to the city council, maybe that kind of understanding that is more important than a kind of a yes, no, or something like that. So I thought that was useful to share.
Yeah, go ahead, Margaret.
I'm with you. I feel that is a very, it's like, it's very composite. It's just kind of explains all the different avenues that there are to this. And, I think we do our job well when we give that kind of input. So.
Yeah, I liked what Sage was saying about, all things considered, if money wasn't an object, I think this is a great project. I absolutely do. I don't think there's anybody that could say it's not a good idea. Unfortunately, the money part is a concern. So if there's a way to voice to the city council, we like the idea, we're concerned about the cost. That to me seems to be a win-win for everybody, and then it kind of dumps it onto the city council to prioritize it and decide what to do with it. And I think that recommendation covers all of our concerns that I've heard so far, at least. I don't know, Eric, how do you feel about
That's
it?
pretty much it. The whole blank check thing is my biggest
Right.
concern. If we commit to it and make a recommendation, and they decide to go forward with it, and there's no cap on it, are we gonna blow our budget on this thing, That's my only concern.
Right.
I have no problem going forward with it otherwise.
And I don't know if that is our concern, because we don't control the budget. But our concern is to hear what everybody said, it's 50-50, 60-40, whatever that number happens to be, and say, we're sort of at odds. We really like the idea, we're concerned about the cost, this is where we are. And then do with it what you will. I think that's, in my opinion, that's the best way to go.
I just have one question, and I think maybe our guest tonight could answer the question. I would like to know how you can determine for the festival how many are out-of-town tourist people versus people that live here that are Ojai. And when I say Ojai, I mean Ventura or the surrounding areas that, would find it very easy to travel.
Somewhat
Localized, yeah. It would be great to know that, but I don't know if that's possible to find that out.
So I don't have that number in front of me right now, but I can get that. We track our ticket buyers and where they reside, and so we have all of that data. I gave you this general comment of the majority of our Ojai patrons are lawn buyers. At the expense of our tickets are probably the highest price ticket to purchase when you come because of the quality of the performers and so many other reasons. And so our out-of-towners are purchasing the 4-day pass, the biggest price, because they're making a commitment to come here. They are at the hotels, they're shopping, they're eating, they're doing all of those. Our local patrons are coming just for a day, just to check it out, just to see how it feels. They most often choose the lawn or the cheapest seat, kind of towards the end. and not necessarily the ones that are up in the front. So, but I will send you the percentage,
That
because
would be
I do have
great.
that average.
Thank you very much.
I'm wondering too if there is a way to examine partnering with the people that do receive the benefit of the improved seating. I don't know how that would work, or
I think even when this first came forward, what was it, a year, 2 years ago? I can't remember anymore, about then. When they were envisioning it, even then, and it's not in the details because it's not there yet, they already had people lined up for in-kind donations of labor. They had people who were heavy equipment providers who were saying, well, we'll do some of this grading. I think from the very beginning, there's an intent not to just go and pay,
Right.
There's, like everything here with the community, they try and bring people together to do the project. So I think even when the first discussion came up, when I heard about it, I was hearing about, well, this person's interested in doing some grading, and not just, these are contractors, these are people who are well qualified to do this. So I think as the project, if it moves forward, I think they're always looking for opportunities to bring the cost down
Yeah.
and include those who are willing to give of their time and, their special skills.
Right, and I mean, we have for projects that we've recommended, we have kind of established a threshold of sharing costs.
Well, and this is
donation.
originating from internally. So
Right.
it's a little different, but I think there's
Right,
always,
but that's
I think we're
kind of
always looking for that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a philosophy we've had as
Yes.
a commission, is that those who are particularly interested in a project should
Help
foot part of
participate,
it.
yeah.
So that seems consistent with.
And there are places that, we have opportunities to go to different organizations, and I'm sure they'll do that with this, just like they have with others.
Right.
To see if we can find funding and
Right.
figure it out.
So I think what Commissioner Murphy suggested makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, it sounds like the feelings on the commission range from, it's probably okay as it is, to depending on cost, to yes, absolutely, let's do it, which is pretty similar actually to what we got from the community in the survey. So, I mean, it seems like that would be a good recommendation, to say that we, for the most part, think it's a good idea, but are concerned about the cost.
I think that's fair. And I also think your summation of our survey would be useful to provide. And we have this as an item on our presentation in our joint meeting.
Right.
And I'm hoping we'll have a similar discussion, and you can present those comments, and maybe we so rarely get together with them, but it's a perfect
Right.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would second that, because I think it's important not to just say, yes, we really think we all, really would vote on it, but we are concerned about the cost, without having your summation. I think those two together would be very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's something that's going to be very easy to get across verbally.
Right.
With the interchange and trying to put,
Yeah.
a paragraph on paper that we're going to beat ourselves up for 3 hours.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you looking for a motion?
Well, I was going to ask Commissioner Taylor, we haven't heard anything from you. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I did visit the site just the other day, and in looking at the engineer's estimate, I think my concern is taking away from the natural kind of the approach that's available now, and having a 3-foot retaining wall with a railing and more of a designated use area takes away from kind of the feel of that whole area. I am concerned about the landscaping plan and the trees, and I'm concerned with families going and patroning and kids running around in the dark and taking a 3-foot header into the planter area. That's a concern.
Yep.
And I think then when we have to factor in the safety aspects just by code, and I think that in itself may very well interfere with the line of sight. And I think we're also, without seeing the numbers, I'm concerned that the capacity is going to be much smaller than we probably, I believe it's going to be shrunk down quite a bit.
And just by going over there and looking at it and trying to envision it being 3 feet higher and not having someone fall off of either side, whether it be on the oak tree side or the sycamore side. And if we're sloping it, I also envision someone going down into the back of that handicap, that ADA area. So those were that was my initial concerns. I haven't been on the commission for lengthy discussions, but those were my initial concerns. I've been to a couple of non-music events in the park, whether it be sunrise service and the way that I see the kids utilizing those areas, like on Ojai Day, there's a lot of activity, and they're not sitting still. So that I came from a safety aspect of how would that area be impacted for other events that were not sitting events. And I think the demand surge is real. I think our contractors are, the economy is up, and I think that the estimate is quite low. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I think contractors are very busy right now. And I think a responsible recommendation to the council, I'm not sure, they look to this commission for guidance on the projects as a whole, and we're to do our due diligence in doing the research, and not that they rubber stamp anything that we do, but I think that they put a lot of weight into our recommendation. So I am concerned with giving them a divided recommendation. I think that if we need more time to research it as a commission and look at real costs, then maybe that's what we need to do, because otherwise we're kind of just dumping it into the council to sift through what really is an unclear, divided recommendation. So that's where I sit.
In response to this particular topic, they have sent it, and they are hoping that they get it back sooner, and they really were looking for my impression of do we think this is a good idea or not? So I think that I'm very happy that we're having our joint meeting, because I think at this point there's a level of frustration that we haven't responded over the amount of time that we've had it.
That would be accurate statement for sure.
Do we have any plans that show how the railings and the steps and how they would visually impact and how the area, something similar to
We do.
this? 'Cause I haven't.
Councilmember Haney had done a artist rendition and a preliminary design.
It's not detailed.
It's not detailed, no, but there is a visual, and you can clearly see what his envision was. So I think it's sufficient.
It's,
I'd like to see that.
just based on your comment, it just brought something to mind that I know the technology is out there. I'm not one of those people, but I know it's out there, that there should be a way to make a 3D kind of an idea so we could see what the seating is going to look like. All we saw was a flat picture of this is what we're trying to improve.
Right.
And I don't think we're there yet. And to be fair with all of our projects, in the beginning, you don't have as much because they haven't developed it yet, because they're not committed to it yet. So they're looking to us to tell them, is this something that the community is interested in, and what's our feedback as a commission? It would not be the last time that we see it. It would be the beginning of then working on that side to decide whether they want to move forward with it, and then the project, and then we get a lot of feedback through the
Design
process.
concept.
Oh, absolutely. Like with the Libby Bowl remodel, every month we had we were going over it, and we had people sitting on committees. Randy Haney, in fact, was on the commission at this time and sat on the committee. So moving something forward doesn't mean that this is an absolute and everything that we see in front of us is how it's going to be. This is the initial step toward getting those details, because I think that it's very difficult, and we have this repeatedly here. We don't have enough detail to make a decision, it feels like, but unless we make the decision to commit to it a little bit, we can't get the details. So we're kind of in that spot.
Have we reached out directly to the other stakeholders that rent the Libby Bowl, other than, say, the music festival? I know they are huge ones, but what about the other people?
Sterling, I don't know.
It's been discussed in the Libby Bowl committee, and that committee is very much in favor of moving forward with redoing the lawn. And from that perspective, I think people there have discussed.
Well, I support the concept. I think it would be great to have a usable lawn area. I just, I am unclear on how, with the just looking at the engineer's estimate, the railing, the retaining walls, the trees, those are real issues. And I just would hate to lose the lawn area as a sitting area.
Right.
Having it be surrounded by
you know,
Hardscape and things coming out of the ground.
obstacles that take away from the natural, the whole purpose of having the grass area.
I totally agree with
And
you.
kind of having it festival style. I think if you are surrounded with stairs and retaining walls, and those retaining walls make me nervous. I just can see a lot of people,
Well,
children.
and maybe that's the way to go about it, is we are, again, I think, in favor of the concept.
Yeah, I would agree with that, that
We just don't really know about cost and what the real thing's gonna look like.
And the only way to do that is to move forward.
Right, for them to okay some more plans, or whatever that happens to be. Right, because all we're doing is saying, if I understand it right, we're just recommending that, hey, we think it's a pretty good idea. To
Exactly.
do something.
right,
To
to
look
address
at.
We don't know what yet.
To look into doing this.
Yes, exactly. I'm fine with that part.
Right.
I would agree with
From the
that.
perspective of Recreation Commission and the
Yeah.
people that we serve and talk to and the information that we've collected.
Because then at some point, when all this gets done and they actually have a plan on the table, then they may come and ask us, what do you guys think?
Absolutely,
And then
with
we
an
would have to-
expectation that they'll come back to us throughout the process.
Then we could either say, heck yeah, or heck no.
Or here are the concerns. Because things don't happen
I agree.
overnight.
No, I
So, okay, well, I mean, I think, I think we're there.
Yeah.
It sounds
Yeah,
like.
I
If
agree.
someone wants to make a motion.
I make a motion that we recommend to the council that the Parks and Recreation Commission is okay with the concept of improving the lawn area and request further study, I guess, is the,
Do you want to put your cost concerns in?
I think that's going to be a given. I mean, there's cost concerns, if we list all the concerns, we'll be here forever.
No,
Well,
you'd said
I
a
think-
two-phased
Yeah,
kind of
but
comment,
I
so-
just think we're okay with the concept, and it just needs to go to
Yeah.
better study.
I don't think you need to put anything in detail, because that's just going to represent all sorts of problems. I think just leaving it as a concept is perfect, just
Okay.
the way it is. And I really appreciate what you said regarding the safety, because I have been down there a lot with my little guy, who's just a terror. An absolute
range.
terror, yes.
We have a lot of free-range children in the valley.
Free range.
He's
That's a
just-
great,
Have
that's a
them at
great
camp,
line.
too.
He loves just running and getting into all sorts of problems and climbing and trying to climb on those trees. And, you know, I totally get what you were saying. I really appreciate it. And that is something that definitely should be considered.
So we'll make,
Safety issue.
so we're making the recommendation to,
So, you want to restate your motion?
Yeah, I'm trying to think it through now. That the Ojai Parks and Recreation Commission is in favor of the concept of improving the lawn area, but has concerns,
Yes.
period. And then we can voice those concerns
Yes.
at the joint meeting.
okay, I will second your motion.
That's good. Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, we can discuss now. I have a concern about stating that we have concerns, but not stating.
Not saying what they are, yeah.
I would suggest an amendment, which is to just state three concerns: design, safety, and cost.
This is a lot of Robert
But we
Rules
can
of
do
Order.
those in the, verbally, I
Well,
think,
so,
can't we?
so he's proposing that. And do you
I'm
accept his
proposing an
amendment?
amendment to the motion.
You
I
get to
would
choose as
support,
the
I
author.
second that. I think it's important to list just the basics, the cost, the safety. I get that they're given, but I think ending it with, we support it, but we have concerns, some of which include safety costs and, forming it that way. Some of which it just gives them maybe our most, if our biggest concern is possibly cost, then maybe we might want to list the cost first.
But so he offered you an amendment. Do you accept or? decline?
Sure.
So
I'm good
you've
with that.
accepted it. So now we have an amended motion
Oh, my
that
God.
now needs, does it need a second or
It needs
doesn't?
a vote.
It-
So that was a friendly amendment.
A friendly
because
amendment.
And a
Yes.
friendly acceptance.
The motion maker approved it.
We don't usually go this deep.
Had the motion maker not approved it, we would have to vote on the
Just go
amendment.
again,
Well,
okay.
let's just
All
go.
right. So now we vote on that motion.
Yes, the amended motion.
To include those 3 bullet points.
Yes.
Those 3 bullet?
Yeah.
Cost, safety, and.
Cost,
Yeah.
safety, and design.
I agree. If we didn't
Yeah.
specify it, and they could say, well, crap, if we build this thing, it's gonna blow up, you know?
So we just,
Without
all
any
in
kind of
favor?
bullet
So now we can call for a vote.
All in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay,
So
we
motion
should amend, but I
passes.
thought I
Yeah,
didn't think-
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He's practicing when he moves, for
All
when he
right,
moves
yeah.
up.
There you go.
I doubt that's on my future.
Hey, that was a good job, actually.
Okay, so
That was a nice process.
and then the only thing is you'll bring your comments back to our joint meeting, because as this moves forward,
Correct.
it is actually a perfect point to leap off into the discussion
Yeah. yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah.
joint meeting.
So, yes. All right, so discussion item 8B. Mr. Grant, thanks for standing by here. Multi-sport courts. So, where did we leave
We
off?
brought, well, we brought the two, well, I know we're going to talk about Sarasota. Well, we don't have actually Sarasota master plan. We do down in recreation staff reports, but we can kind of
Right.
use those two different, well, just the original concept plan for the master plan.
Right, so,
Decide to kind of lead off the discussion. We went over in the last meeting about how we looked at other areas. We looked at the horseshoe pit area. We went into the parking lot to see if it could somehow be one multi-use court where the Quonset hut is, and another one in a different location. And we realized those weren't viable options.
right.
So we're back to square one, basically,
Yeah.
of do we accept the original location as it was in the plan now? Or do we reorient the, the courts in a different orientation?
Yeah.
And if we put it in a different orientation, that will affect field use or move into the field of play, and will affect some trees, more trees.
Right, right.
Than the other, than the original concept as we see it now on the master plan.
Yeah.
And do we build one or two?
So this is a continuation of a discussion we've already
Yeah.
had.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you. I think we were missing some members last
Yes.
time and
Yes.
wanted to have the
So
full
we had a pretty
commission
robust
here.
discussion, but now
Yeah.
we tabled it until.
Yeah, and just to add to that, for kind of the sake of everyone, if anyone missed it. So the orientation in the master plan of the two courts is east-west, up in the southeast corner of the park.
Right.
And, you know, what started this whole discussion a few months ago was first a thought that orienting the courts north-south would be better for issues of sun. And once we did that and we kind of measured out where the courts would sit, they actually ate into the ball fields quite a bit, which put us on this path of looking for other locations for the courts. And from that exercise, concluding that actually the way they are in the master plan is probably the best for them, because they don't interfere with the ball courts. We can fit two of them there. We couldn't really fit two anywhere else without eating into the ball courts or plans elsewhere in the park. So that was my conclusion from being involved in the process. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts, but I think if we're on board with the courts as they are in the master plan, I think that's our recommendation, is to move forward with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so.
to move
the
forward
bit-
with
right.
that as the project, as part of our
Right.
capital improvement project.
The reason to go north-south was to help with sun, you know, right, the interference of the sun and the positioning. But we realized, or the discussion was, well, is that a big enough issue to take up ball field space? And
Well, and there were.
safety issues, potential safety issues too, with softball
And
games.
trees and a variety of, it was,
And
there were a
trees
variety
being-
of problems. It just,
yeah.
it didn't quite fit.
Yeah. Was the benefit of the sun, fixing a sun problem more important than the other issues?
Sophocles, I had a question about the far east ball field. Do we get complaints about the sun when people are, is that a concern when they're in that
It-
dugout versus the?
It is not. They know it's part of the game, so to speak.
I guess a little bit more even because both teams are
Both
looking
teams
into
are
the sun,
dealing
but not
with the same.
necessarily, I guess, because one team is hitting into the sun and the other is catching in the shade. But
But they changed.
But they
it.
flip-flop, right?
Yeah.
But on
So they're all
basketball,
gonna-
is there any regulations about that? I mean, like
Well,
in,
as a coach and a player, and excuse me.
Yeah,
I don't-
go ahead.
You're with the courts going east and west, like they are in the picture. One team is going to be looking directly, depending on the time of day,
for half the game, essentially, right? Don't you
essentially
always-
for half a game, which is, in my opinion, going to destroy the continuity of the game. If you can't see the basket because the sun's in your eyes, you have no shot. Oh, I also get the part about cutting into the diamond and doing that. I mean, running them this direction, it's going to be 50-50. One team has the sun, one team doesn't have the
Yeah,
sun.
For the
well,
time
you
of
know,
the day,
they
that's a
change.
problem.
And that's
Well-
only prevalent for 2 months a year about in the summer, where otherwise the sun is lower on the horizon, and it'll be an issue with the courts going that way.
Yeah.
So,
And they change sides too. I mean, in basketball anyway, at halftime you change.
yeah, but it just, I don't
Or-
want half the game to be affected that one team can't see the basket. And that's going to be
But-
the concern.
Right, but that'll
It's even,
happen for both teams.
but it still stinks for both
Right.
teams, right?
It
I mean,
will.
it's-
For certain parts
That's
of the
for
year,
certain
certain
parts-
part of the
parts
day.
of
So
years,
it's not
certain
a,
part of
it's
the-
not
Right. That was my point. I tend to agree that all things considered, putting them in the direction that they are now, for all the reasons, is a better configuration. Yeah, I just do. I mean, it's less impactful. It's not perfect. And for June and July, it's going to be a problem.
And are those
But-
what is the basketball, forgive me for asking.
10
this.
feet.
Okay.
No, the basketball season, when are we, I mean,
Oh,
how,
it's,
it's January, December, January, February? So in the
Yeah.
season, if you will, they wouldn't be as
Effect.
impacted.
as impacted.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
But
And
there's
we'll-
summer leagues, there's things that go on, all the time. Again, these are going to be, for the most part, playground courts.
Yeah.
Not
really.
organized
Not orga-
leagues,
the
it's
other
just
ones.
guys walk in and shoot baskets, and that's what it's going to be, in my vision,
Yeah.
about 90% of the time.
Sure.
And then in the winter, during basketball season, I'm sure there'll be practices and usage, and the sun's not an issue then.
Right.
So, the more I've kind of looked at this and thought about it, because I was the one that brought up
Yeah.
the way the courts were running, this is going to be fine.
I know we don't have a futsal program at the recreation department. Does anyone know though what the futsal season is? If that would.
I'm assuming during soccer season, which
Well, I
is
think that
basketball season.
Those wanting to use our courts, it wasn't seasonal
Yeah.
Right.
for that.
It's
Yeah,
a year.
because they were wanting to use the tennis courts for quite a while. It was causing some conflict, and
Did you have
so
any
it's
discussion
recreational.
about their concerns about it going east to west versus north? I mean, that wasn't an issue.
I think they will take any court that is free.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And-
They're
and
just
the-
super anxious
Make
to
it
have a
work.
The
place to
difference for
play.
them is their goal is on the ground. The basketball goal is up in the
Right.
air, which
Oh,
angles
yeah.
you right into the sun.
Right.
That's the difference.
And I think if you talk to drop-in players,
I wouldn't.
and if we're the difference between not having, if.
Right, nothing at all,
Having
or-
a smooth project that can go right away, or trying to make it work this other, they'd be like, oh, don't worry about it. That's my
Maybe
take.
at some point
Because
there's
we don't
something
have
we can do
outdoor
to
courts.
mitigate the sun, like with shade, a
Yeah,
shade
some
sail or
sort of-
something that you can just put up during the times of
I s-
issue.
I suppose. I
You know,
mean, it's
behind, I
possible
don't know
that'd
how
be-
that
you
works,
have to
behind
put
the
some-
back.
I think most
Be pretty
drop-in
high.
basketball players, they drop in and they play. I just don't think this is gonna be a big deal for them. That's just my take. If they have it available, they'll use it.
I think it physically fits, knowing not, my husband plays basketball, but it's not really my favorite sport. But I think that it fits physically, and I like it. And if we're only gonna build one, I think having it in the far corner and being able to build another one at some point, or it just fits. Doesn't affect negatively all the other
Yeah. Yeah.
softball.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, when we did talk about the sun, but then we realized, wow, it really will bump into the fields and interfere and have more impact on trees out there. It just made sense.
It just
to
looks
keep
nice.
it as,
It
to
really
come
it
back
looks
to
like it
square
fits.
one, to come back to square one, yeah.
Keeping it on the.
And is the one with the bleachers in between, is that what that, is that the current design, or did that get taken out? Which
Well,
one's-
no,
What
it's
are the
supposed to
talking
be,
about,
the courts were
bleachers?
going to be the courts were going to be side by side, like all enclosed, really one
Yeah,
Oh,
to,
you're
to-
saying in
to
between.
Commissioner Taylor's question, in one of these drawings, there's something drawn in between
Right.
the two courts.
Mhm.
No, there wouldn't be space for bleachers in the
Okay, they're
middle.
squeezed together a little bit.
But there would, I believe there'd be room on the sides of, the outsides
Mhm.
of the courts.
Okay.
I think it had originally called for like a bench in the middle.
Like
I
a
think,
seating
yeah,
wall,
represented.
almost.
Oh,
yeah.
got it, okay.
Yeah.
Was it agreed upon to have 2 courts?
That was the proposed, that's what's in the adopted master plan. The adopted master plan shows 2 courts because that was the hope, and that would really serve well both the drop-in and the recreation program for programming.
But I think the discussion over the last couple of months was budget, right? Based on, we could do 1 court in the middle we could then add and split that, or we can build one and make it, the recommendation would include the option for 1 or 2 courts, if I recall correctly?
I think
Well,
we haven't
now-
made that recommendation.
Yeah.
yet.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, wasn't it more cost effective to build both courts at once?
Correct.
It is.
Yes.
It's almost
And
half.
then address, and I think provide for lighting conduit.
Just to make sure it's all
right,
stubbed out and
So that it's
ready to go.
already
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and fencing around it, obviously.
That's part of the project.
Yeah, part of
Yeah.
the project, there would be
Yeah,
fencing.
and that's
around.
where when did the lighting come into play? I don't remember the lighting being part of it at the beginning.
I brought it up because, you know, you imagine how much people can use it now, but winter and summer, the amount of light for users, you increase capacity, like the skate park. Just putting lights in
Yeah.
creates so much capacity in the facility. So I know that it's probably not, it's not in the budget in the beginning, but to be
Right.
prepared and ready and know what you want to do when you can find the funding, I think it's just makes sense.
And it will mitigate the sun.
Well, if it's at night, there is no sun.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
You can play later.
If the
Right.
sun is an issue for you, you can come
Yeah.
at 7:30 and we discussed, I think it was last meeting or maybe the meeting before, that the lighting that we were looking at was very direct focus. So
LED.
that,
Yeah.
the LED, so that the
It would have
neighbors,
to be.
there wouldn't be a negative impact on the surrounding area. Mhm.
Kind
Yeah.
of tennis court style, almost.
Well, actually,
those
go look at
blocks.
the skate park where it literally
Very
ends right at
direct.
the, you know, if you go look at that, you can really see how different it is.
Yeah,
It doesn't bleed. I mean, it just,
stops. Yeah, that's nice, very nice.
Mhm.
so from my perspective, the recommendation is that we recommend as a project from the master plan, the 2 multi-sport courts at Sarasota Park. That would be my very simple recommendation to city council to move forward. Will some of these questions come back? They absolutely will. And will we have to talk again about 1 or 2 or location? Yes, but instead of trying to guess where that's gonna be, let's
Yeah.
ask for what we want and get feedback. That's my take on the process. That's how I'd like to see us go forward.
So is there a motion in there?
I can make the motion if everyone's comfortable with where we're at. Okay. I would like to recommend that we move forward with the multi-sport courts as laid out in the Sarasota Park Master Plan.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Great.
Progress.
Just that I'm clear. In other words, you're not supporting proceeding with the existing budget because we have a $150,000 budget. So we wouldn't proceed with anything. We would, I guess, have some kind of discussion with council.
Council would need to have discussion.
Yeah, about what, either to come up with funding or delay it until funding's available. Will seem like the basic options. I know there's a park bond on the ballot this fall. If that comes through, that could be a potential source of funding. On the other negative side, the SB1, there's a challenge to the SB1, the gas tax this fall. And if that challenge repeals the gas tax, then that's a huge impact to the city's funding as well. So, yeah, there's possible good, possible negative, yeah. Okay, but
I think our preferred plan is to stick with the 2. If council's determination is we just can't get there and they're not interested in giving us any, you know, they'll get, I think it's a discussion. I think this is a back and forth discussion through recommendations and feedback, right?
Mm-hmm. I think the other part is the Ojai Civic Association. Always have high hopes that they'll be willing to support. So
Yeah.
if they were willing to support more funding, for instance, to get the 2 built now.
Let's ask.
Yeah, and
I want to ask and
It
be
was-
turned
that
down
was
and
the
have to
cost-effectiveness
readjust.
of the
Better
proposal.
to ask for forgiveness
Very
than permission.
cost-effective.
And what about the lighting? Was there anything in that motion related to lighting?
Mm-mm.
No, sorry.
No.
No, but I don't think that's important. We just proceed with the courts and we can,
Yeah.
throw
A
that
little
in?
bit like skate park.
I mean,
if
there's,
it-
there's a lot of design details we haven't
lot.
captured
Right.
in the motion, but one is that we think there should be, that the conduit should be in place
Right.
so that lighting is
I mean, I'm
possible.
happy to make a second recommendation if we feel like we need to, but
Well, with the existing lighting already out there, it wouldn't be incredibly expensive to just run the conduit, would it?
Not the conduit, I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the skate park, right? They put the
Right.
conduit in up front, and then
That
I
was
think
all I
that.
was after.
You're
Yeah.
you're just front loading it a little bit.
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I think lighting
Plan
was
ahead.
in the range of
Yep.
50,000 for the
Okay.
skate park, yeah, so.
I think we're
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Good work. So item 8C, 5-year capital improvement plan.
I don't have a copy of that.
No, I don't either.
Oh, well,
I brought a copy if people like,
okay, and
yeah,
it's
of the
in-
adopted.
great, wow, look at, you mean 11 by 17, thank you.
I love
Okay.
11 by 17.
All right, pass it around.
It is in the slideshow presentation too.
Okay.
There's in your copy of that, it's in there.
Very nice.
Big 11 by 17.
What was that?
I like 14.
Oh,
Or 16,
have-
maybe even. This is nice.
We have copies of that? Oh, yeah. Everyone should have a copy of that slideshow presentation. This is better?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
thanks.
More better? Okay, just take it.
Did you want one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We look at this every meeting.
Take a break, Phil.
as a reminder, this is the one that has the sorry, it looks like there's not a header on there, but there's 2 columns for each fiscal year. The first column is, let's see how this goes, make sure I got it deep. Yeah, the first column is called Fund 31, that's city money. And the second column is outside or other funding, outside grant funding, whatever it might be. So there's not a total here because it was kind of hard to, without, I guess we could have printed another one that had the total. But, so for instance, for fiscal year 18-19, really the first column, Fund 31, covers practically all of it, except when you get down to the Field 1 light poles and also the futsal, there was a presumption that we could receive an outside support for half the money. So those 2 projects, you got to add them together. I guess it'd be 150 and 56,000.
The cost on the 2 courts, 225. Remember what was the ballpark cost on the 2 courts, Sophocles?
Oh, the 2, I think it was around
There you go.
260 was for the 2
Oh,
court, yeah.
So, Greg, you're looking for input from us on,
I'm not sure why it was brought up for tonight's meeting.
I'm not
Has
sure
anything
either.
changed?
Yeah.
I think you guys asked for it, but I thought there were some questions about, like, money that was spent already as opposed to
Oh, in the
Right.
amounts in the columns, that's
so,
right.
right.
amounts
and
in the columns.
I think that gets into our presentation for the joint meeting. But there was a question for fiscal year 17-18, these amounts are what was spent?
Not
Is
what
that
was
correct?
budgeted. Yeah,
It's different
Right,
than
this
what
is
was
an
budgeted.
estimate of what total expenditures are, that's right.
but not what was budgeted, and the difference between those were the questions that we had.
Yeah,
I see.
That was the question. But it doesn't represent it on here,
The
right.
difference between the budget and, yeah.
actual.
Yeah, I wouldn't say for sure, because I don't have it handy, I don't know if your presentation has it, Sophocles, but I believe that most of these projects that are proposed for this fiscal year, which just started, are rolled over. For instance, the restroom, we had some work proposed for this fiscal year. We had the futsal courts proposed. We had the Field 1 light poles proposed. The gymnastic equipment's proposed. I'm starting from the bottom up. The sewer line, we were going to get started this year, and that's delayed related to the remodeling the restrooms. So I think most of what's is essentially been rolled forward was with the project you see on there.
Well,
And there
so-
are certain projects that were, yeah, I guess is.
You rolled the projects forward, and so the entirety of their amount moved forward. The question was, and some of these weren't the budgeted amounts, so these are actual, so they're different than what we saw, and I did not bring a previous budget, which would have been helpful. So I think the curiosity was, if the entirety wasn't spent of the budgeted amount, is it moved forward, or what, how does that work?
Yes, I mean, it's really, Fund 31 is the capital improvement fund.
Uh-huh.
So all that money every year, whatever's expended keeps pulling from the pot, and there's monies that keep pulling into it, right? It's 20% of the TOT, otherwise known as the bed
Right.
tax, right? So that money keeps coming in.
But if you had planned to spend, just even with these items, say $14,000 and you spent $9,000, what
Right.
happens?
I think you'd see the proposed expenditures were closer to, what we're seeing right now for this fiscal year, 172 plus the 100, so something in the range of, 270 or 80,000.
So have the fiscal year 18-19 numbers been adjusted upward to reflect what wasn't spent? Or I think that's what you're getting
I think
at?
it's still an actual estimate, whatever the real costs are. Yeah, there was not,
Okay.
So I don't think they have, because they're the same as before.
Right.
So maybe we can't answer this question tonight, but I guess what I'm looking at is if you intended to spend $150,000 this year and you spent 140, these are just making up numbers to try and make the point, and there's 10,000 in that wash. I understand that the projects move forward. Does it increase by the amount move forward into the 172.50? Is that now a representation? So do you understand what I'm getting at?
I guess, I'm sorry, I'm
I
kind
understand
of
it is-
missing it for some reason. Like, for instance, the futsal court might be a good example. We spent $3,000 on the design effort.
Right.
And I think last year we had $150,000
Just in
appropriated
this
for
year.
it, budgeted.
And we push that forward.
So we just pushed that forward. We did a little design work, but we're still keeping it rough that it's 150 available. We didn't actually
Okay.
drop the 150 by the 3,000 spent this year.
Okay, and like the picnic area, canopy, and pad, that was a leftover cost from the year before.
Right.
And so you pushed it this way, but it didn't, okay,
The picnic area, canopy and pad, right? I mean, you're saying, yeah, that was a couple of years ago, so we, that expenditure was complete, and you're saying if we didn't spend the fully budgeted amount, would
Could
that
we
roll
move it-
forward?
Yeah, in a year, if we're not spending, if they allocated so much to us for a year and we don't spend it, a whole project, I know we bump forward in its entirety, but in those other projects that we came in under, does that somewhere, I know that the general fund is the general fund and it's open to all capital improvement projects and none of it's specifically a fund for parks.
You're right.
But-
I think we're always so tight on budgeting that it's
It just
pretty
moves somewhere
unusual we have
else.
surplus. It's unusual
Okay.
for us to come in under. For instance, we did the, I see, the picnic area canopy pad's blank, but what do we got there? That was just the last cost that came through. There
Yeah,
was some
it
little bit
was the end
minimal.
of the project that came in later,
Yeah.
things you had to do at the end.
I guess for instance, we did that shade between the gym and
Mm-hmm.
but that was actually covered underneath the operations budget, Sophocles, right? So,
We had it on the capital improvement one, but it was,
I don't, what
Not
was the
much.
total cost of that project, like 7,500?
it's about right. Mm-hmm.
So, sorry to kind of move this discussion
Sorry,
forward.
yeah, I'm
I think
good.
the concern that I'm hearing from Commissioner Intner is that there's a possibility that the funds indicated going forward aren't enough because that whatever was budgeted for this prior year, some of that wasn't spent. Just making sure that the totals are still up to date, I think. if you
Yeah,
go
and I think that's what we do. We take a look, we say, hey, actual costs are coming in this, we're planning these projects, and is it realistic? We're always on the tight side.
Yeah.
We're always hopeful. And so I think, yeah, we've updated all the costs for proposed cost.
Okay.
And as you can see, the best we can, right? We had 150 for outdoor basketball court, which is on the low side of what the estimate was for for consultant had a cost closer to 180 with some contingencies in there.
Mm-hmm. So,
For one court.
Right.
no, the consultant's cost wasn't for one court.
Well,
The consultant had
it was.
The original consultant's costs were for two.
I don't think so. I think
At some point, we pulled it apart and started messing with
did.
it.
You're
But in
exactly right.
it's originally, they gave us costs for two.
We have costs for both.
We
Yes,
do.
we have
I
both.
think, and I think that was 260.
Okay.
Yeah.
That,
You're right.
it
in
was
the ballpark.
260.
Might be 263 or something.
yeah,
but you're right
whatever
in
it
there.
was, but roughly.
So
I think you're, if I understand your question, right, and it seems like we all have a
clearly
different.
not being,
What I'm getting from your question is if we don't spend the money in 17 and 18, does it get pulled into 18 and 19?
and I guess what I would like, it
Yeah.
will totally simplify this whole entire
Yeah.
discussion, is when this comes back to us, can we see actual expenditures and proposed budget next to each other each time we look at it? Because then if we have a question we need to ask, we can ask it right then and there and it's very clear. And it's not an unusual thing to see in a budget. Proposed, actual expenditures remainder.
Right, I think the
on a
budget
project.
hasn't, I think
Yeah.
this was the 5-year capital improvement
Yes,
program,
it
which
does.
is a little
So if we
different.
could just like see the year actuals that way, you know, it obviously doesn't apply to the future because we don't know yet, but the actual year, that would be helpful each year to see that.
Okay.
Because then it was just really clear.
Sure.
And also, what is rolled over? I mean, I'm understanding that some of this monies are rolled over, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean,
If, you know, if the project's rolled over, presumably the project's rolled over. If you killed a project, then it wouldn't roll over.
Right,
You know, we're
right.
we're just really just taking every year as kind of a fresh start.
I
Hey,
know.
what are we proposing next year? What are we? How much money we need? It's
I
always,
know.
and then it's a balance within the city's full capital improvement budget. You know, how much money?
It's what piece of the pie?
Yeah, right, exactly. And I don't know how hard that would be to do right now. I don't know if it's in your other presentation you had, Sophocles, you
that?
know?
How
If
hard?
it shows the budgeted amount for these
It
projects.
does not, it does not. It's basically
not.
this, it's
Wow.
basically this chart.
Yeah.
So that's what you want. I don't know where
I
that
think
is.
it's helpful.
Well, I think it would be helpful. I don't know if it's critical to tonight or to our joint meeting.
No, I don't think it's
Right.
tonight, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
if it happens, great. If it doesn't, that's okay.
and it really isn't a huge step. I don't know if you've got a budget handy here, because the budget book, this is really just a few lines off of it
Right.
that we
Yeah.
grab. And I don't know if it's worth that
don't-
diversion.
I
We'll
don't
grab
have
the
that.
note.
I don't think we
have
need it
the
tonight.
budget
I-
book.
Okay.
Just in the future, it just makes for a complete discussion.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
anything else? Yeah, thank you. Anything else on CIP?
If it makes you feel good, we're ordering that gymnastics floor
Good.
the next probably week.
It actually makes
It's
me
coming
really
in. It's gonna-
excited.
It's going to happen. And we're actually going to use
Good.
probably half of the used floor for our movie nights. You know, we're just
Oh,
going
yeah,
good
to,
idea.
we're just going to take it and use it for flooring on
That's
movie
great
nights so kids
repurposing.
can lay
Great
out
idea.
there. And,
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll protect the floor in the
It'll
multipurpose room.
protect the floor in the multipurpose room too, yeah.
Okay, so why don't we move on to item 8D, joint meeting with city council. We have revised slides, so we looked at them at our last meeting. Alice and I have made edits based on that. Do we have it on the screen? No. Okay.
We don't.
Got it printed out.
The revised matches the handout.
Correct, yes,
Perfect.
this is
Yeah.
the most up to date.
I will start by saying thank you to Allison, who's put a lot of work into making this
I'll
look really
second
good.
that.
Thank you,
She
yeah.
did a
Both of you,
terrific
thank you for
job.
working
Yeah,
on it.
Ryan did a lot
Yeah.
presentation this year.
Okay, so we can flip through this. Page 3, you can see the numbers on a lot of the slides at the bottom right corner. So the first few slides, no changes. This one on Sarzati Park Master Plan.
Just wanted to look over
Oh.
my shoulder.
it
That looks
doesn't-
good.
Yeah, Allison, I whited out the preliminary. There was some text that said preliminary, so I kind of
Good for you.
blocked that
Yes.
out.
I noticed a couple of your edits.
I see it is kind of hard to read the text in here.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that's something we can
It'll show
control.
up on the screen better, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it showed up on my monitor.
And we
fine.
also
If
could,
you zoom in on the.
Because my arms aren't nearly long enough.
we
Right.
could have it as a handout
No,
too,
no one can see that.
to hand out during the presentation. If we're worried about people not being able to read it.
So then on the next page, we've got the Sarzati Park project timeline, going along with that previous slide on the master plan. I ordered this in terms of where it falls in the CIP.
Looks good.
Community partnerships, Allison added, there was a request to add, I think, the school district. So we added that in. If anyone wants me to slow down, let me
No.
know.
No, you're good.
We got the open house, and then I rearranged the order a little bit. I put this new programs, old programs, kind of towards the beginning of the programming section, but we just listed what's new and what's no longer. And then we go into some of the, thank you,
Thanks,
Greg.
Greg.
We go into some of the specifics, aquatics, summer camp, night out movie nights. I did take some liberties in kind of cutting down the amount of words. So if it's
I like that.
it's
That's
worth
good.
people looking at to make sure I didn't kind of cut out too much. Or okay, after school program. This one we might want to look at. I started with the two schools that we have been providing service for, and mentioned that Miners Oaks is going to do theirs internally next year, and then have the details. Gymnastics, tennis, and our participation graph, and you even have a comment.
Oh, good, that's really clear.
Yeah, we don't need that comment.
Sorry.
We took
I
care
didn't
of
realize it would print that way.
that. Yeah.
There's another one coming.
Revenue and expenses. This, it doesn't show up on here, but on the screen, you'll see that for fiscal year 18, the last one,
Mhm.
I have it kind of grade because those are estimates.
It's not complete, yep.
So
Okay.
the rest are like actual numbers, and then there's kind of a grade area. Yeah. Okay, so that's the program and parks update. Anything on that section? Okay, and then ongoing commission topics, we rearranged the order based on the discussion we had last time. So we start with the.
So were these in, and I apologize for missing last, were these in order of kind of importance, or were they just kind of?
I forget what the rationale was, but
How did
it was
we
a
order 'em?
different order
Yeah.
before. And so, yeah, we talked about what we thought was most
We
important.
prioritized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's, yeah.
And likely, I'm guessing we might not get to all of them.
Right.
So are you guys pretty confident? I'm just thinking Libby Lawn's a bit down there.
Yeah,
Do you
that's a good
wanna-
point.
You want to move that up a little bit?
I think
Okay.
so.
You wanna make it
yeah.
third?
What makes you think we won't have time to talk about it?
I think
Because if we start talking about a defibrillator, and that could take about 10 minutes of the meeting,
Well,
which I think it
we-
did last time.
If we, yeah, that was craziness.
But that won't
If-
happen again.
If we think the Libby lawn is, to me, and again, that wasn't here, whichever the order is that's going to take the most discussion should be at the top.
Well, other than that means you won't discuss the other things.
Well, we just said we're not going to get to them all anyway.
Well,
Well,
I
I-
know, but putting
I'm
something
just-
third is a good place to put something that you really want to finish out your discussion, from my perspective. I think we should talk about
Well-
CIP and master plan. I don't think they'll take a long time, but.
Right, I'm just saying Libby Lawn, for example, is
Yeah.
probably
Switch it
above
with youth
naming
committee.
policy and,
I would completely agree with that.
So put it above. youth
and maybe
committee?
even youth committee.
So
No offense.
I think so.
I think that, I would put that right under multi-sport courts, those two, whichever
Yes.
order.
They're-
Yes.
Whichever
I agree with
order
that.
you want
Libby
those
and-
in.
Right, make it third.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Or
Third,
fourth, make it
those two
fourth.
can almost be done. Same
right.
importance.
I think the multi-sport courts and the Libby Lawn, we have the most feedback to
Correct.
give the
I
council.
totally agree.
So we want to spend most of our time
Yeah.
probably on those two things.
Yeah.
We might even put those as 1 and 2.
Yeah, if you did that and just moved everything down
Well,
one, you'd
you know
probably
what,
be fine.
I like the CIP first, so that they have a perspective, that it isn't just about two things.
Okay.
So that they're looking at our whole big picture, and then dive into the two that are, kind of have the heat right now.
Okay, so then.
From my
move-
perspective, because the back of the CIP slide, that next slide, kind of gives an overall perspective, and then, but
Okay.
either way.
So question then, what is it we're going to talk about, the Sarzodi master plan it needs to be?
Well, we have a
Okay,
new
that.
one that they haven't, they may not have seen
They
this
haven't
one
seen
yet.
that.
Okay.
This is
They
brand
have
new.
not
So
seen
we
it.
need to propose our final, this is
The one
the
without the big
final,
building,
because
right?
they wanted the building out, and so the
Right.
building is out, and so
Good
we
enough.
just, we complete the loop.
Good enough.
Right.
So
hopefully
wha-
that's-
how's that order going now?
But, so. do-
CIP,
Master plan,
Master plan, multi-sport, Libby, and then the rest.
I think so,
And those two could be interchanged, doesn't matter to me.
yeah.
Okay.
But I do think that Libby Lawn, we could be on for a while.
Sounds like it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so does that, reordering sound okay? It's just moving Libby Lawn from where it is currently to right after the multi-sport courts? Sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
yeah, sure.
All right, so CIP, This is similar to what Greg just showed us, and
Yeah.
then Allison made kind of an easier to read list of projects on the next
that's
slide.
good.
Look, there's the estimate for the 2 courts right there.
Without the lighting.
Yeah.
Um,
What are these? Are these just dead? space?
Sorry, so when you add comments in PowerPoint and you print it out.
Ah,
it's a
okay,
message.
so right over my
Those
head.
are
All
just,
right, good enough.
yeah,
I didn't
communications between Allison and I.
My apologies.
So Sarzadi master plan, it's just kind of an update that we updated the drawings, that multi-sport courts is our top priority. I think that's going to get mentioned several times in this presentation,
so.
and I think that's good.
It is
Because
good.
that's really the thing we want to push forward right now.
Question,
Yeah?
and maybe it's my own twisted sense of humor. But under this fall, soliciting a new youth commissioner
Oh,
as
sorry.
opposed to selecting?
Yeah, can we maybe go in order as
Okay.
printed, so we're not jumping all over the
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought we got there already.
Okay, so Sarzadi master plan, it's 22 and 23.
Multi-sport
It's the
courts.
multi-sport courts,
Got it.
Sarzadi. This one,
That reflects what we discussed tonight, so
Yeah.
that's good.
yeah, so if anyone has any thoughts on that. And then youth committee, all right,
I just don't like the word
okay.
soliciting.
What would you like to say?
I selecting,
Recruiting.
Recruiting,
recruiting, yeah.
recruit.
Okay,
Where is
Yeah.
that?
Under this fall,
Oh,
I-
okay.
either's fine by me,
I
but-
see.
I just
yeah.
find that an
Recruiting.
It's a little,
interesting word.
anything else?
Recruitment.
On that one? This one I played around with the order a bit, so you might want to think about how the information is presented. 25, naming policy. I don't know that this one changed too much. 26, Libby Lawn. I think I have a good sense of how to update this now that we have a recommendation and the feedback we've gotten. So I'll take a stab at that, and we'll circulate this before the joint meeting. So if there's more comments, they will get to me. And then the Valleywide Parks District, I just put in this, I don't know, Commissioner Intner, if that seems okay to you? Okay. Just to keep it on the radar. So that's what we have.
You guys have done a great job. I
Yes,
think.
that looks
incredible
great.
job.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Incredible.
Well, very, very well done.
Very, very,
future in
very
that
well
group.
done.
So kind
Congrats.
of a heads up for the new commissioners, you've heard allusion to what happened last year, but it's very easy to get off track on these meetings, and this is kind of our one opportunity a year to sit down with the whole council. So I think we all have maybe we should all be encouraged to keep everyone on track, and I think we definitely want to give an update on what's gone on in the parks and the programs over the past year, and we want to have enough time to discuss those 2 items that we identified, have a lot of time for that, and then cover these other things. So we should all kind
And then
of
there's,
have that in mind.
right, and council often has their own ideas that they want to
Do we have a
discuss.
time yet on the 28th?
6
6
p.m.
o'clock, yeah, because it's
What-
the hour
what
before
day
the
is it?
meeting.
What day is
That's
it?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It's actually the Tuesday
the
before a
council
council meeting. So
Okay.
they have a
Okay,
regularly
get off
scheduled council meeting on that day.
We
And
have 1 hour.
so
for
we're
this.
1 hour.
hour.
It's
Yeah.
6 to
Yeah.
7,
It's-
and
yeah.
barely 7.
Right.
They got to.
Definitely.
They're
gotta
supposed to
be
start their
on
meeting
target.
Yeah, it's not an open-ended
It's a
meeting.
more like a
And
6:55.
it wasn't the Parks and Recreation Commissioners that tended to get off track, as I recall.
We will be blindsided with questions.
Yeah.
Let-
Yeah.
Let us move on if we don't have a direct answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, just drop it.
Yeah.
It's for the benefit of both,
Right.
for the council, because they'll have questions, and it's a good time for them to ask us directly, which is really valuable.
Sit in this room.
Yeah, well, they set up tables through here and then put
Okay.
chairs all around it, and
Kind of a U-shaped or a box, I guess it was
Yeah.
last year, wasn't it?
Uh-huh.
Rectangle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I was not, around last year, Will Commissioner Firestone be the chair so that he will take the questions and he will respond, in the way that we, have been?
Well, I will give the presentation, but I think we should all be welcome to answer the, if
Okay.
there's questions.
Pretty much a
don't-
free-for-all
Yeah,
after that.
free-for-all.
Oh, no.
It's a little like our
We
regular
tag,
meetings.
he tags somebody in, and then they talk, and then they tag somebody in.
That sounds a little scary.
Yeah.
We'll keep our eye on you.
I know.
But yeah, definitely don't be shy about responding to questions or comments from
All
the
right.
council, for anyone.
Because they won't be.
Ooh.
Anything else on
Dangerous area.
the joint meeting?
Yes.
All right, so then item 8E is ad
whoops,
hoc
yes.
committee preparation. If we could keep this brief, we're already
Yeah.
at 8 o'clock.
It can be very.
But if anybody has on any of these, I would say any of the committees, if anybody has anything they think is important to bring up, we go for it.
Can I just add one thing on your committee, or there was some talk about having a table at that event, the welcome.
At the high school.
Yes.
Welcome Nordhoff.
So I will no longer be at that Welcome Back Wednesday
Oh, Welcome
because
Back Wednesday. that's
due to
fine.
scheduling
You have to be at school?
issues. Sort of. I have like a seminar, like video conference I have to attend during that time now. But I mean, you could still contact Ms. Carmichaels. There is a part of the thing, I believe, called community, which we had last year, where they did have, like, the Rotary Club came, I think, and they did have community members come to speak. So I can talk to Ms. Carmichaels or whoever runs it this year and see if we can get a table. I'm not certain on it.
I'd be
but
happy to
I
attend
can-
if we were
Just-
able to.
Yeah, I can definitely try.
Just from a recruitment standpoint
Right.
for
Yeah.
For the position.
your position. So again, remind me of that day and time.
August 22nd.
First day of
Yes,
school.
August 22nd.
First- yeah,
And
first day of
the it's from 12:30 to 2:30 because the first half of the day you go to classes like a minimum day, and then you have the little fair celebration thing.
Now, where are the booths or tables set up? Last year, where were they?
Last year it was in the gym.
Okay.
All right.
So
well,
Miss Cole Michaels is who you need to
Yeah.
contact.
I have her email if you want me to give it
Yeah,
to you.
that'd be great. She used to work at the rec department.
She was the youth commissioner. She was telling
Oh.
me about it when I very first.
I wonder if she has a recommendation. Have we reached out to her directly just to ask her if she has a recommendation or like somebody who she thinks might?
Or open it up to her leadership kids, because she runs leadership,
Might
right?
have
Right,
some,
she does.
because she obviously knows that, then
Yeah.
kind of what the concept is. That'd be
Mhm.
probably a great resource.
Yeah, she would be.
Yeah.
All right, well, staff,
Okay.
we'll reach out to them.
Um,
I'm just going to mention that I'm going to meet with Commissioner Gilbert and with Allison next week. We're going to set up some time to talk about kind of picking their brains about youth committee stuff. So that's going to happen before Maya leaves.
And then just so you guys know, naming committee, as you have probably guessed, has been a casualty of the summer. But it is still, it's pretty close to the top of my pile, and I'll work on getting that draft to you guys as soon as I can.
Right. On the staff reports.
Yeah, anything else on ad hoc committees? Okay, staff reports.
All right, updated Sarasota master plan. So we are
That.
bringing that, of course, forward to the joint meeting. Are we in consensus about the new rendition of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, that's all I have. I just wanted to just verify that there wasn't any disagreement on that. Great. Summer programs, just give you a few number updates. The aquatics program is over. We had a total of 217 participants in swim lessons. We sold 37 passes total between group and family passes.
I just want to say, technically not over. Our swim lessons
No,
are over.
swim
Public
lessons
swim
are
will
over.
continue through the end of next week.
That's correct. So we have
One
2
more
more
week of
weeks
public
of
swim.
public swim at Nordhoff High School.
Correct.
6 days,
6
6 days a week.
Yes.
Yes. Our specialty camps that are still going on, we have currently enrolled we're in week number 7 of summer program, and we had 450 kids in our 1 week specialty camp. So yeah, it's a great number. Yep. Next week, which will be week 8, so we have 2 more weeks of summer program. We have a cooking camp, Lego camp, horse camp, surf camp, Starlight dance camp. So those are the camps on the docket, 1 week camps on the docket for next week.
So of the 450, you said 56.
456.
Is that an increase, about the same, a little off from last year? Where are we in that?
I have not had a chance
good
to look up the
question.
last year's, but next meeting we'll be able to have totals from all the summer programs and we can compare them to last year
My
for you.
grandson's been going and he says he loves it. I don't know
Love
how
seeing
much
him
trouble
there.
he's gotten in,
He's a
but
cute
No.
kid.
yeah,
He's
well,
a great camper.
yeah. Oh, good.
As far as I see.
Good.
He's
yeah,
a
he
solid
calls
camper.
me and tells me what his day was like. We went to the zoo.
Yep.
How old is he?
7.
Yep, that was the last field trip zoo,
Was it
and
Tuesday, I think, or
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Yeah, all our
Great.
field trips are on Wednesday. So next week they're going to the junior campers. That's the 5 to 8 year olds. They are going to, where are they going next
Water
week?
park, Lake
Oh,
Casitas.
they go to the Lake Cetus Water Park, and the senior campers, that's the 9 to 13 year olds. They go to golf and stuff. So some of the trips we do split, a little more age appropriate. Yeah.
I had a kind of a request maybe for the specialty camps and in the activity guide.
Yeah.
I noticed now that I'm a pretty heavy user of the programs that it's hard with that. You have to go through the whole guidebook to figure out, like, in a particular week what is offered. And I just think it'd be really like a helpful kind of cross tabulation to see, like, which camps are in each week, like you
Have
just
like a
read.
calendar.
Yeah, like I just described.
exactly.
We have it on our registration form, but you're right, in the actual activity guide, it's not done chronologically, calendar-wise.
Yeah.
I think I've seen it, the Ventura one does that.
Uh-huh.
Each week, everything that's
Yeah.
offered that
The
week.
block schedule.
That-
yes.
Right.
You see a week at a time, and then you can pick out what will work
So
as
you
you're
don't
planning.
conflict, yeah.
Yeah.
True enough. That's great input, actually, to do it by date in the guide, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't adjust it that way.
I just had a thought too, because of the term senior campers struck me as interesting. Has it ever been, 9 years old? Oh, boy. Has it ever been discussed to actually have, we have the senior physical fitness group.
Right.
But to actually have a senior camp where they play pool one day, or they go swimming, or they exercise, or they take a hike, or they do whatever.
I think that the
Interesting.
Help of Ojai, the Little House, does a lot of those activities.
Do they?
They do have, but the interesting question for this is location to me. This is back to that partnership idea and where you're offering it.
I would
to.
do it during the school year at the Boyd Center when the kids are in school.
It's an interesting question.
There's no use.
Right.
Just a thought.
Right, during the day, you're talking during the day.
Well,
Yeah.
we go to bed at
Like the
5.
senior.
So, it has to be during the day.
Well, that's something to think about. We are trying to increase our adult and senior
Yeah.
programming.
It's a good
So
question.
it's
I just,
something
This
to
hit me.
chew on and think about. Our movie nights, where I always bring them up. So our next movie is Coco. That'll be August 24th. So our numbers have been a little down, but
Summer's
it's
hard,
because
yeah.
it's summer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great movie, though.
Yeah. And I think that's about it. Oh, we got our fall activity guide coming out at the end of August. And as most of you know, we do mail that out to everyone in 93023 and 93022, Oakview and the Valley.
Is it mostly designed at this point, or is it still?
It is in its first draft.
First draft, okay.
Yep.
Good to know.
Yeah, but again, we'll have the library ad in there and the Help of Ojai ad. And I think we've added one. Didn't we add another ad? Another partnership. Help me out, Allison.
OUSD, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't OUSD. It's a new, well, to be continued, to be seen.
We'll see it.
Yeah, you'll see it. But that's all I have for updates. Allison, you don't have anything else?
No.
And we already talked about the youth commissioner vacancy. We will miss you. Congratulations on
Miss you
going to
guys
school.
too. I love this.
And that's it. We will just do our best recruitment on trying to get another youth commissioner in here. It has to be a junior, not, they don't have to attend school, a school in the valley. They just have to be.
You sure it has to be a junior? I was a
I
sophomore.
thought,
I don't
know,
think it
but I
is.
was looking at it. I know you were.
Did we change
but I-
them midstream?
Way back when it was a junior.
I looked at it recently and I thought it said someone in their junior year.
Made changes to it, but,
Well, anyway,
okay.
Look into
we'll do
that.
our best recruitment job for that. Yes, and I don't have any other information.
Okay, thank you. So item 11, City Council Liaison, Mayor Johnston was here earlier. We can get a report from him. Item 12, future meeting dates and agenda items. Seems like this was a blowout meeting. I haven't thought about what's coming up, but after we get through the joint meeting at the end of the month, I guess what's next for us?
Wouldn't it be
September meeting.
September 6th?
Yeah,
Is that the first Thursday?
it is.
Okay, so it'll be September 6th. Any
Oh,
agenda
I didn't
items?
change that before.
It's actually today.
It is today's. So we'll have to change
Oh.
that.
Right,
to
so it'll be
whatever that-
September 6th.
Whatever that Thursday is, yeah, September 6th.
But any agenda items? I think we'll probably be debriefing from the
Mhm.
joint
Yeah.
meeting.
Maybe you and I, Chair Firestone, and with Vice Chair Murphy can just
Yeah.
go over that.
Well, I think one topic would be to see how the recruitment did at the youth table, if we have something set up.
Yeah.
Do we have any people? Do we not? Where are we in that process?
Yeah.
'Cause that would be a role we want to fill pretty quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's important to look back to that junior idea, because I think junior year is a really hard year to get kids to. It's a very intense year for them, so if we're having recruitment issues, it might be interesting to look at a sophomore. How do you feel about that? Think there'd be any
I
more
think-
hope with a sophomore?
When I asked kids, the biggest problem was that the school now requires that you take 4 years of a sport.
Right.
So the problem was kids were worried they couldn't make it to meetings
Right.
because of the sport requirement. It wasn't so much about classes.
Right.
So
So at
I-
least one season a year, they're knowing that they're gonna have issues in the evening.
Yes. And I think also junior year was pretty busy, but I think it would be better to start sophomore year. Just from my experience, being able to stay longer on the commission, I was able to improve and understand it better. So I feel like if we could change it to sophomore again, I think that'd be really like best, even for you guys, to have someone who's
Yeah.
consistent.
So,
Yeah.
In my history as a teacher as well, it's rare, present company accepted, to find a sophomore that can sit around with 6 or 7 adults and talk about things in a,
though the
you
group
know,
of kids
clear
wanting
and
to do
concise
this are
manner.
a little unusual too.
I agree.
In a good way.
So, yeah, that's just 2 things to weigh, that's all.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying though, I do. All right, well, we'll see how we do and then we'll go
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Firestone, so do we want to take a poll at this point or email about everyone? I'm assuming everyone will be available to attend the joint meeting.
Yes.
I have to get off early from
Fair
work, but I think I should be able to do that.
Okay.
I won't be
I
here.
usually work till 7.
After I get back from vacation.
You'll be gone.
Okay.
You'll be
You'll
primed.
be here. Great. Okay, so we won't have Commissioner Gilbert. Maybe Murphy?
What, I probably can make it. I may be a couple minutes late, but
Okay.
I'll be here.
Anyone else?
I'll be
No?
here.
Okay,
That should be fine.
okay, that sounds good. All right. Meeting adjourned.
Sweet.
You know what, I may not be here, I take it back.